So my name is Annika Garbers. This is my 5th year talking here at Drupal Camp. It's my 6th year using Drupal. It's my 8th doing web design and work with content management systems. I started using Drupal after the first annual Drupal Camp Atlanta. That was back in 2009. And that was the event that really opened my eyes to the awesome that is open source projects, Drupal specifically. So I maintained 2 Drupal-based websites for 5 years, magazine websites, which included managing a staff of over 70 people worldwide. And currently I maintain a couple of different Drupal websites for various organizations, and I'm working with some other students on exciting new projects that I will hopefully be able to talk about soon. So how many of you guys are absolute Drupal newbies, or almost absolute Drupal newbies? Awesome. This session is for you guys. This is a basic session. We're going to talk about the terms and concepts that you need to understand to be able to get around Drupal. So how many of you guys have installed Drupal so far and seen this screen? Some of you? Okay, cool. Even if you haven't installed Drupal yet, I promise that's what it's going to look like. This is the default page that you'll see in the front page of your website when you install Drupal. And that looks simple enough. It's clean, it's easy to understand. And already this first term is going to present itself to you, the word content. That seems simple, right? You know what content is. You speak English. Content is stuff that you're presenting to the users on your website. It's articles or posts or pictures. Anything that users that come to your website see is going to be content. That's easy. And then all of a sudden, there's this word node. And whoa, hang on, what's a node? How is this different from content? How is it the same? How are they related? And then before you have the time to figure that out, you hear about a page. And it's starting to get really intense. What's a page? And then there's more terms, views and blocks, and all this stuff is popping up all over the place. Not literally, but all over your website. You'll see them in books. You'll see them in Drupal training videos. Most of these terms were mentioned this morning in the keynote, and you'll hear people talking about this stuff all the time, constantly. It can get really confusing and really frustrating, and unfortunately, that kind of can deter some people from trying to get into Drupal and make them nervous about the immersion process and about learning about it. That's what I'm here to help you with today. We are going to work through some of the very, very key basic terms of Drupal, what they mean, and how you use them. So the first concept we're going to talk about is a word that I already introduced to you guys, the concept of content. So this is simple. Content is stuff, text or media, pictures, videos, whatever, that you present to your site users. So when somebody comes to your website and looks at a thing, that's content. Drupal treats content as kind of an umbrella term that is used to describe a whole bunch of different content types. Right? This is what Drupal does. It's a content management system, and so it manages not only just content in general, but also a lot of different kinds of content. So here are some examples from different Drupal sites around the web. By the way, all of the examples that I'll be using in my presentation today are from the Drupal case files at drupal.org. If you're new to Drupal and you're just kind of poking around trying to see what its capabilities are and what you can do with it, I definitely suggest checking out the Drupal case files at drupal.org. There are a whole huge wide variety of sites that do a bunch of stuff. Some of the examples that I'm using in this presentation, for example, on this slide, we've got the Grammy website, and we've got The Economist and the White House. And then there are also some that are smaller, that are personal blogs. I think there's somebody's like knitting blog website on here somewhere. So there's a whole bunch of different kinds of examples. If you want to check out what Drupal can do, how different it can look, check out the Drupal case files. So back to content. These are all different types of content. So even though they all look kind of similar, you can see the similarities. They're all different types of content. This one's a forum. This is a blog post. You might have a poll or a page. So Drupal talks about content as being this whole big giant thing, and then all of these little terms underneath it are called content types. There are some content types that come with Drupal. They're stock, they're default, and they come with the core of Drupal. Does everybody know what core means? We're good on that? All right, cool. Those are things like blog post and page, and I believe forum is there too. And then the awesome part about Drupal, which is why you're probably looking at it, is that you can add infinite content types that do all kinds of different stuff. So let's say you have a magazine website, and you want to have a different type of content for photos, for articles, and for, I don't know, press releases. You can assign those each different types of content and then change how they appear and how they work based on what type of content they are. We'll talk more about that later. So the next topic that we're going to address is a little bit trickier because it doesn't seem tricky. That's the problem. From my internet computer brain, I thought of a page when I first was introduced to Drupal as you go and look in a web browser, and the stuff that shows up in that browser is a page. I'm looking at a page. I type in google.com, there's google.com's home page. Drupal doesn't treat a page like that. The way I choose to think of the distinction, which I think might be helpful for new users as well, is Drupal has pages and the internet has web pages. A web page is what I just described, where you're going to go to a link and you see all of this stuff in your browser. A page is a very specific type of content that's used for durable but not timely information. Let me show you an example. So this is one of the websites that I maintain. This is a site for my robotics team. And so here we have two different types of content. We've got a page and we've got not a page. This is our About Us page. So we've got information about each of our team members and we've got stuff about our coach. And the reason this is durable is because it's going to stick around. We don't really need to change the stuff about us that much. Our names aren't going to change. I mean, we might go in and make some minor additions or changes now and then, but for the most part, it's going to stay pretty static. It's going to be linked to at the top bar of our website right there, and it'll be easy to get to. This guy here, on the other hand, is not a page. It's a blog entry because it's talking about a very specific, it's talking about a competition. And so it's timely information, right? Nobody's going to care about this a year from now. Nobody's going to care about this a week from now, but right now, that's important. So it's not a page, it's a different type of content. Does that make sense to everybody? Cool. Also, I want to highlight really quick, this area here is the page, not the entire thing. That's a web page. The little section in there is a page. Big distinction, I'm going to mention that about 40 more times, just so we're clear. All right, so the next concept we've got is called a book. This is not a concept that you'll see as much when you're just wandering around poking in Drupal, but it is prevalent and important to understand. So a book is a set of content that's organized. So let's say I run a Geek Wiki website and I want to write about Princess Bride characters. Let's say that I want to write a page about them because the Princess Bride isn't going to change anytime soon. So I've got a page called the Princess Bride characters and I'm writing it and I'm writing it and I'm writing it, and then I realize, oh my god, this is 6,000 pages long. There's too much information about the Princess Bride. I need to cut this up a little bit and make separate pages for all of these different characters. So now I've got a Buttercup page, a Wesley page, whatever, but now they're all separate. They're not all in the same place. They're smaller, easier to understand, easier to get to. Well, not easier to get to yet, but they're compact as opposed to being in one big giant thing. I still need them to be together because if somebody's coming to my website and wants to learn about all the characters in the Princess Bride, they're not going to want to have to search in 16 different places to get to where they're going. So what I do is I make a book, I put all of these pieces of content in it, and that's the Princess Bride characters book. You can also create classifications within that. So for example, if I want to talk about the main characters in the Princess Bride and the supporting characters in the Princess Bride, I can have a further classification. Different types of content can be in the same book. So I can have an article about Buttercup and I can have a picture of Wesley. Or different types of content or different pieces of content can also be in multiple books. I know this is getting a little confusing, but it works pretty much like a hierarchy in your computer if you've just like poking around and made file systems to help you get to stuff. That's what this is. It's just Drupal's way of treating it. The next concept we're going to talk about is a node. Again, like page, this one is a little bit trickier, but it's different because when I first entered the Drupal community, node to me seemed like this mysterious like code word concept. Like, I use Drupal because I know what a node is, and it's like a secret initiation thing. That's not actually how a node works. It's not super complicated, but unless somebody sits down and explains this to you, you might get pretty far in Drupal without understanding what a node is completely. I'm going to try to make it clear. A node is a numbered piece of content. So every single piece of content on your website from day one, from your Hello World page, has a number associated with it. That is a piece of content right there. That's a piece of content, that's a piece of content, that's a piece of content, that is. All of these are nodes. Together, they are nodes. All of that's a node, that's a node, that's a node. They are all nodes together. So just for fun, I wanted to show you guys, this is the very first piece of content that you'll ever publish on your website is called Node 1. And if you're just poking around on the Drupal case files like I suggested earlier, just for fun, go ahead and type in theirsite.com/node/1 and see what the very first piece of content they ever posted was. A lot of the time they'll have deleted it and it'll just redirect back to their homepage, but occasionally you'll find like a semi-corporate site with a Hello World post that was just stuck in there somewhere. So obviously you can rename URLs, so just because something's called node 63 doesn't mean that the only link that you can ever use to get to it is blah 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 /node/63, but that node will always be associated with that number. You can delete nodes and whatever, but the first node you ever post is going to be node 1, the second is going to be node 2, the third is going to be node 3, and if you go back and delete node 2, the next one is still going to be node 4. Does that all make sense? Okay, so it's a way to refer to numbered pieces of content.
So if you change the URL, can you still go in and search for the node, the number?
Yes, yeah, you can. So for example, like the about page might have been like node/34, and even though my site might say mysite.com/about, you'll still be able to get to node/34 and it'll redirect you to the same thing. So the last couple of concepts that we talked about had to do with content, right? The stuff that's on your website, the stuff that people see, the stuff that you create. The next concepts that we're going to talk about refer to the structure of a website, how you create it, and how Drupal actually handles the structure of it and the administrative. And All right, so we've got the concept of a region. This one's pretty easy. A region is a named area on your web page, not a page, a web page. There's a difference. So for example, here is one of the websites, again, pulled these off the Drupal case files, and I'm going to go ahead and highlight some of the regions on this page. Come on. There we go. So we've got this guy up here who's probably called the header, and then we've got a sidebar region, and maybe a content region. These all have pretty easy to understand names. Depending on the theme, the names are going to change. Somebody might call this left sidebar in a theme, one specific theme, and then the same thing might be called sidebar 1 in another theme. But usually they're pretty intuitive. So when you're poking around on your Drupal site trying to figure out where stuff is and what it's called, it'll be pretty easy to understand when somebody says left sidebar. You're like, that's the thing that goes in the left part of the website. It's simple. So that's what a region is. It's a named area on your page. So what kind of stuff do you put in regions? Well, you can put content in regions, nodes. You can also put blocks. So a block is the next type of content that we're going to talk about. A block is a little bit of code, or a lot of code, that goes in a region. It does something and it goes in a region. So what does this mean? Well, it's kind of a broad concept because you can have a block that's as simple as a word. You can have a block that just says about, and that can be an entire block, and you can stick it in a region and it'll show up on your website and say, boop, about. Or you can have a block that takes input from different kinds of content and changes it and filters things and does all kinds of stuff, and that'll be more complicated. But the main definition of a block is it's a bunch of code that does a thing and you put it in a region. So example, here's this website, and I'm going to highlight a couple of the blocks. This guy right here is a dynamic slideshow block. And then these over here, that's like a, gosh, I don't know, a live streaming thing. And then this is probably new types of, or new articles. Notice that these two guys on the side are in the same region, but they're separate blocks. You can put multiple blocks in a region, and you can put multiple pieces of content on the region. It depends on the theme and how much space there is allotted for blocks. I know this is kind of tricky, just to make sure before I go on. Does this all make sense to everybody? Awesome. Okay, so this is how you configure a block. So in Drupal 7, it's super, super easy. You just go up and click on the gear in the top right of any block and hit configure blocks, boop, and it'll send you to the page that has the name of the block, the code that's in the block, what it does, and some more information about it. Or you can go into your block administrative environment, which I think is like something like administer site blocks, something like that. It's easy to find. And it'll show you a list of all of the blocks you've got, which regions they're in, and then it'll show you configure links too. Keep in mind that any block can be enabled or disabled, and then any block that you add to the website can be enabled, disabled, or deleted. You can't delete from your site the blocks that come with Drupal core. So there's a couple like the navigation, the who's online, that just come with Drupal. And the reason you can't delete those is obviously if you've got someone that doesn't know what they're doing, goes in and hits delete on the navigation, it's gonna kind of mess you up. But you can disable them, so they don't have to show up everywhere. You can control where they show up, what they are, when they show up, what changes about them, all kinds of stuff. And then this is what the configuration administration looks like for the blocks. This is a super, super easy one. This is just raw HTML. All this is doing here is it's a social media block, so it just goes in the left sidebar, and it's got 3 little pictures linking to Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and then all it's got is the images and the links. That's it. And then you can add the format for that, and you can choose who can see it, all kinds of stuff. You can also add more functionality to blocks with other pieces of code later, and I'll talk about that more in a second. So the next concept we have is a field. If you don't know what this is already within Drupal, pay lots of attention because it's really important. The distinction between a field and a region is huge. They are nothing related, even though to me as a person on the internet and a speaker of the English language, I think, okay, field, region, those sound kind of similar. They're not, I promise, totally different things. A field is an attribute of a piece of content. So remember, a region is where blocks go in your website. A field is something that you assign to a piece of content. So here's an example. Let's say we've got a blog post. And within that blog post, you're gonna want a body, so where the content of your post goes. You're gonna have a title, so what it's called. You're gonna have the author. Maybe you're gonna have the date it was published, some resources attached to it, all kinds of stuff like that. All of those different attributes are different fields. Drupal's default content types come with some default fields. So for example, the page content type, I believe, comes with like title and body and maybe author and a couple of other things like comment settings, stuff like that. You can also add additional fields to new content types. So that's what makes Drupal so great. That's why it's a content management system, is it allows you to do lots and lots and lots of different, very specialized stuff with your content. So for example, here's a couple, these are a whole bunch of different kinds of fields. You've got title, menu settings, which menus it shows up in. We'll talk more about that in a second. Comment settings, all kinds of stuff like that. These are all attributes of a piece of content, fields, not regions. Doesn't have anything to do with that. Next, we're going to talk about menus. I promise this one is easy. A menu is a way for users to get around your site. So if you've ever used a computer before, you've used a menu, and Drupal menus work basically the same way, except you can have tons of them. Here's another Drupal site. I'm going to highlight really quick. These are 2 of the menus on this site that stand out to me. So you've got these guys right here, and you've got these links across the side. So this is some static links to maybe like they have a page about card making and a page about cross stitch. And then these guys on the side are links to content that has to do with that kind of stuff. So these are both menus. If you've opened up Drupal, started using it at all, you'll probably also notice that you have an administration menu. That's a menu too. Here's what the administration side looks like for configuring menus. So you've got a list of all of the different menus that you have on your site. The navigation, that's easy to tell what that is. And then primary and secondary links are the ones that come with Drupal by default. Just a note really quick, if you're looking at pretty much any theme that you download off of Drupal.org, primary links are generally going to be the links at the top of the website on that top bar. So whoops. So it's these guys right up here. Just in case that wasn't intuitive, it's important to understand because I spent about an hour poking around and trying to figure out, like, what are those called? Primary links. There you go. There's an hour. Okay, so to add a menu, super easy. You literally just go and click Add Menu, and you put a machine-readable name, a title for it, and a description for the menu, and then you can choose where that menu goes, what kind of stuff is stored inside it, and what it looks like. Menus good? Everybody good on menus? Awesome. Okay, so we've talked about content, we've talked about structure. The next two things that we're going to talk about are really what make Drupal, what makes Drupal Drupal. This is big. This is why Drupal's great. This is why the community is here. Drupal has thousands and thousands and thousands of people contributing to these things, and the first one is called a module. Everybody already know what a module is or have some kind of an idea? Cool, then I'll go through this a little bit faster. A module is a bunch of code that does a thing. It adds functionality to your website. It changes what your website does. There are two different kinds of modules in Drupal. There are core modules that come with Drupal. So when you install Drupal, it'll have a list of all the core ones. And it'll be things like the node module or the, oh my gosh, I'm blanking, the node module or the taxonomy module, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Stuff like that is in core. And then you can go to Drupal.org and check out the thousands and thousands and thousands of contributed modules that people, developers, have created and put out there on the internet for you to use, free, for you to change, totally up to you. You can have people create custom modules, all kinds of stuff. Modules are great. They are why you're here, I promise. So module changes what your site does. Important. So these are some names of popular modules that you've probably heard of before, or you may have heard of. These are some other names that if you come from another CMS development environment, whatever, that you've probably used to refer to modules as. If you're coming from WordPress, a plugin does the same thing as a module. And then this is what the Drupal interface looks like on the Drupal.org for downloading and installing modules. So it'll show you, this is like 11,297 of them, and this screenshot is a year old. So there's many, 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 I promise. And you can filter, you can look for the most recent ones. I definitely recommend, before you do a whole lot else on your website, just go to drupal.org/project/module and look at all of the ones that are in like the top 10. Because these are the ones that probably 90% of Drupal users are implement on their website because they're important. They add really, really basic and really important functionality to your Drupal website. Okay, so this is what the list of modules looks like on your Drupal site. So as you can see, there's all of these guys here that come with core. It'll be really obvious because it says like right there, there's core optional. There's also a core required. So some of these things you can't turn off, like login you can't turn off because if you shut yourself out of your website, then you're kind of done. You can't turn off content. But some of these are optional, like the comment module, the forum module, but they assume that you will probably be using most of these on your website, and so that's why they're included in core. And then you have all of the contributed modules that you install that are all listed on the same thing, and you can click to enable them or disable them. I don't recommend randomly disabling modules if you don't know what they do, just pro tip. Okay, so I also suggest, if you're new to Drupal, this is super awesome, super helpful, super important, check out Advanced Help. Drupal.org/project/advanced help will save your life. What Advanced Help does is gives you all of the information that you need about all of your modules in one place, an easy to get to place. So if you've downloaded a module before, you may realize that it's a bunch of code. You got different kinds of code that all do different things, and then there will also probably be a couple of text files, just README files, or oh my gosh, read this before you start files, or more information files, stuff like that. Advanced Help, basically what this contributed module does, so you do have to go download and install Advanced Help, is takes all of that information, takes the README, takes all of that stuff, condenses it and puts it in a place that you can get to in your site without having to go poke around in the source files for all of the rest of your contributed modules. So it doesn't know everything automatically, but as soon as you install a new module on your site, it will be able to get to those README files. So for example, let's say I want to find out more about my CAPTCHA module. So I've got Advanced Help installed on my website. I download and install the CAPTCHA module. I refresh the page. I go click on Advanced Help, and I see, whoop, there it shows up in the list of all the modules that I've got. I can click on CAPTCHA, and it'll automatically spit out the README file with all of the information from the developer that you need to learn about that. And often the information from the devs has easy stuff like how to actually use this module and get around it. And sometimes it'll have links to more information and more tutorials that go more in depth about how to get around modules. This will save you so much time and effort because it just basically eliminates a lot of trial and error and having to poke around and get to all of those files yourself. Advanced Help, it's cool. Okay, so we talked about modules. The next concept that makes Drupal, makes it awesome, is a theme. Now, any of you guys coming from WordPress or Blogger or another blogging site? Okay, cool. So you guys know what themes are already. They change how your site looks or acts. So a module changes what your site does. It changes the functionality. A theme changes how your site looks, the look and the feel of it. Drupal has way fewer contributed themes than it does contributed modules. These are some of the names of some popular contributed themes that you may have heard of. The reason for the probably about 1/10 of the number of themes as there are modules is because people download Drupal because they want to be able to make it their own. If you have a WordPress site or a Blogger site or whatever else like that, you probably are using it for blogging for a small business. Maybe you're using it for something personal or smaller scale. But if you're downloading Drupal, what you're probably thinking is, yeah, I need to take what I was doing with WordPress or Blogger or whatever and make it mine. Make it work for me. Make it do the stuff that I want it to do. And so Drupal has a whole bunch of really cool contributed themes like the Zen theme that come with a framework for a theme that's easy for you to develop and change and customize for yourself. So it'll be very, very basic, bare bones. It'll be like, here's a content region, here's a title region, here's a sidebar regions, go nuts. And you'll just either be released on it yourself. There's a lot of documentation for how to do this. Don't worry, if you don't know how to code, you don't have to go like figure it all out from scratch. Or you can get a designer or developer to do it for you. So these are some of the themes that come with Drupal. At any one time, you can have a couple of themes enabled. You can have a theme for your administrative environment, which you guys have all probably seen before. That's what the very first screen that I showed you looked like, the My Site Hello World kind of look. That comes with Drupal by default. And then you can also have the theme that the rest of the users on your site see. So you got an administrative theme, and you got a users, everybody else that comes to my site looks at this theme. I suggest keeping the default administrative theme or another simple, clean, easy-to-use administrative theme enabled. The reason for this is it becomes very, very easy to tell when you're in the administrative environment and when you're in the user environment. It's super easy because it looks totally different. I mean, you've still got the same title, maybe the same slogan, some of the same menu attributes, but you can tell when you're in and editing blocks and doing stuff that the rest of the users that come to your site won't be able to do. So keep an administrative environment. If you don't like the one that Drupal comes with, find another good one that you like, and you just check like administrative theme. So here's how to configure a theme. This obviously isn't what I'm talking about by like going in and adding what the stuff looks like or how it works, but most themes come with a set of things that you can change about them without going into the source code. So those are things like the logo, the name, the slogan. If you have like a shortcut image that you want to show up in the little tab bar of your browser. All that stuff is easy, and you just go to the theme and click configure, and then you're dumped out with this list of stuff. Okay, so modules, themes. Everybody clear on the differences between those, what they can do, why they're important, why they're great? Yeah, cool. The next two things we're going to talk about are contributed modules. They're contributed modules, they're contributed modules, they're contributed modules. And the reason that I'm emphasizing this so much is that if you go around and look on your site that you have currently installed and you haven't installed both of these modules and you're looking for their functionality, you're not going to find it. Go and download and install these modules, and then they will be there. That's how that works. So the first one that we're going to talk about very briefly is the views module. This is a big deal. Views, kind of in a nutshell, lets you filter and organize data. So let's just take an example. Let's say I have a whole bunch of articles about animals, and I want to filter them alphabetically because on my site I don't really, like, my users aren't going to care whether the zebra article or the bamboo article, the baboon article, how about that, was written first. They're going to care about the order of them, the order that they're presented in, because if you're trying to find a baboon article and you're just sorting like through a thing that seems kind of random, it's not going to make sense. So views can take a bunch of content and filter it out for you. It can filter stuff by title, it can filter stuff by author, it can filter stuff by any of those fields that we talked about before. So here's the views interface, and I promise There's a whole bunch of documentation about this. I'm not sure if there are any other sessions today. I think there usually are, but there might not be this year. But I definitely know that if you want to check out more about this, I suggest you do. There's sessions online from last year. There's sessions from other camps and cons. There's tons of information on Drupal training websites, and I'll provide you with some more information at the end of the session if you want to go and learn more. Okay, so that's views. Views is a part of core in Drupal 8. Cool thing, important thing. This is super, super great. This is a pattern that you guys will notice a lot if you get into Drupal is somebody will make a module and the Drupal community will really like it. They'll adapt it. They'll make it awesome. A bunch of people will start using it on their site, and then it will become a part of core. There was a module a couple years ago called Content Construction Kit that is now a part of core in Drupal, and it was another really big one like views that now just works with the rest of Drupal seamlessly. So views is a part of core in Drupal 8. Super cool. I'm going to talk more a little bit later about all of the new stuff that is in Drupal 8 and the differences between it. So the next contributed module, remember, again, this is a contributed module. It's not going to show up on your site by default, but I suggest you go and download it, is a panel. So panel lets you customize layouts for different uses. So let's say that I've got a website with lots and lots of information about, it's the internet. Let's make a cat website. So you've got information about cats, and you've got X, Y, Z, ABC kind of cats, and you want to have pages about all of those. But on your front page, you don't just want to have a list of cats. You want to show people this is a cat website. So you want to just have one big giant picture on your front page. By default, Drupal can't do that for you. Drupal can't, like, you can't just go in and say, this is where I want a cat picture to go, and it go, boop, okay, and get rid of all of the rest of the content structure and everything for it. So what you do is you go and you create a panel. So this is what the panel's interface looks like. It comes with a whole bunch of default layouts. So you've got single column. That's what I would use if I just wanted to put a picture of a cat. You've got a bunch of different like 3-column layouts. You can add new ones. And basically what panels does is it's an easy, very helpful, easy drag and drop interface to help you change how different parts of your site look. So you can customize your front page, you can customize your about page, all that kind of stuff without having to go in and do some crazy theming work. That all make sense? Cool. So views, panels. Panels is not a part of core in Drupal 8. It will be supported for Drupal 8. So the next two terms, next two or three, couple of terms that we're going to talk about are terms that you definitely heard before because they were created by whoever creates words or by the tech community to refer to some stuff. And Drupal has kind of adopted them and changed them a little bit and made it kind of their own. Still means essentially the same thing. The first one is taxonomy. Everybody has heard of the word taxonomy? Yes, I hope. Cool. Taxonomy in Drupal, the easiest way to explain it is it works like tags. So let's say that I've got a piece of content about, let's use Princess Bride again. So I've got a piece of content about the Princess Bride, and I want to tag it with movie, I want to tag it with characters, I want to tag it with awesome. And then when people go to my website, if they want to read about movies, I want them to see that article. If they want to read about awesome, I want them to see that article. If they want to read about characters, that's another article that I want to show them. And maybe I also want to show them stuff about Star Wars characters, or I want to show them other awesome articles. So tags can help you classify content. Taxonomy is not limited to tags. You can create different kinds of taxonomies that are called vocabularies. And so by default, I think Drupal might have tags. I don't know. I'll have to go check that. But you go and add vocabularies. So you give it a name, a description. This kind of looks like a lot of the other administrative environments that we've been looking at. And then you can add, so you add the name, the description, and then you configure which content types you want this to apply to. So maybe you only want tags to apply to blog entries, or maybe you only want tags to apply to pictures. Maybe you don't want your bloggers to be able to tag stuff. That's how you configure that. You change which content types is categorized for. So an example of something you can do with tags, just in case this wasn't obvious, if you've got a website here, so here's an example from one. So let's say this person, judging from what the suggested articles are, I'd think logically this is probably an article about design, about web design, or maybe about clothing design, because you've got something over there about clothing. So the way this website probably spit out this stuff for, here's suggestions, is they looked at the tags from the article that you were reading, and they said, okay, design, maybe web, maybe, I don't know where the clothing one came from, maybe that's also tagged as design. And then it said, okay, here's more articles that are about that same kind of stuff. This person's interested in thing A, they'll probably be interested in thing AB, AC, and AD. That make sense? Cool. Next thing we've got is roles. Roles are easy to understand. This is cool. Roles are definitions and permissions for who can do what things on your website. So when you create a Drupal website, there will be I think, still two default roles. So you've got anonymous user, who's just a person that comes to your website and is there, and hello, I'm on your website. And then you've got an authenticated user, who's a person that goes and logs in. You're also going to want to create an admin user, who's a person that has all of the permissions to do all of the things on your website, and keep that role to a very, very specific small group of people, or one person. But these are all examples of different kinds of roles. So this looks like maybe something from a blog website or a magazine. And I'm sorry I keep coming back to this. It's just a very good definition to be able to understand this kind of stuff. So this person has a blogger and a feature writer and a moderator and a senior editor. And maybe all of these people have different jobs. And just like the way a company works, you've got person A that can do things A, B, and C and go in rooms E, F, and G, and then you've got person 2 who does things E, F, and G and go in rooms A, B, and C. So people have different jobs, and this is Drupal's way of handling that. How can you do stuff? What stuff can you do? What stuff can you not do? How are we on time? Oh my gosh, okay. All right, I'm going until 12, right? I got 3 minutes. Cool, all right, we'll go through the rest of this. All right, so a cache is easy. You guys know what a cache in a web browser does? Essentially, it makes your Drupal website faster. That's the easiest way I can explain it. So it's a storage system for stuff. You've got a big, big Drupal website, lots of content, and you want to be able to make it faster. That's what a cache does. If you get a whole bunch of crazy Drupal errors on your website and you're new to all of this and you're like, what all of this is, I suggest clearing the cache. It's the first thing you do, and then you can panic. But before you panic, clear the cache. Or install something that does it for you. If you want to learn more about Drush, talk to me afterwards. So what's new in Drupal 8? So those are all the concepts we talked about. Woo! We got through 15 of them. Cool. Drupal 8 has all of these things that we talked about, but some of them change, and there's a couple of new ones. So the first thing in Drupal 8, if you want to learn more about it, definitely just check out the information page at Drupal.org. Mobile is a big deal. Mobile is a super big deal. I promise. Really, really, really big deal. Mobile in Drupal 8. Some of the other things that Drupal 8's got going on, it's got support for HTML5. There's better support for, views as a part of core, better support for multilingual websites. WYSIWYG is built into core also. That's like when you edit something in Word, how you don't have to type raw HTML, you get to click the buttons. That's what a WYSIWYG is. And then it's also got this cool thing called Twig that helps you with theming. Again, if you want to learn more, come talk to me afterwards. So how to learn more about this stuff? I definitely suggest checking out other sessions today. I suggest all of these websites here are some of my favorite training ones. Definitely do some of your own research and talk to Drupal people. This is the best advice I can give you. Immerse yourself as much as you can and talk to people. Because congratulations, you have chosen the best CMS with the best community ever. In my 6 years of being in the Drupal community, I've never seen a negative comment on a forum. That's a big deal. Like, you've been on the internet. You know how big of a deal that is. There's always negativity everywhere. And the Drupal community is so great, so supportive, so helpful, and so interested in getting new people feeling more comfortable with what Drupal is, because it's so huge and impactful, and there's a lot of stuff going on. All right, so what we're going to do is skip down a little bit. These are all of the sources that I use for my website, so you can go ahead and check out all of these. Again, Drupal case files is a great resource if you want to just kind of see what Drupal websites can do. And then these are all the things that we covered today. This is me, Annika Garbers. That is my session from a year or two ago, a couple of years ago maybe, about some must-have modules for your Drupal website. So if you're looking at all of these contributed modules and you're totally overwhelmed because there's 11,000 of them and you're trying to figure out which ones you need, that will help you out. And then all of this stuff is also going to be, this presentation is going to be on SlideShare. I love helping people, like the rest of the Drupal community does. So if you need help with anything that you learned today, anything that you learned in this session, if you want clarification from some stuff, shoot me an email, ask. There's no harm in asking. The worst that anybody can do if you ask them to help you with something is go, no. And nobody's going to do that. I can pretty much guarantee it. So that's all I've got. Thank you very much. And I don't think we have time for questions because it's lunchtime.